10 in Surat AlAhzab. So, not to spend too much time talking about what we studied in the last 3 or 4 lessons, but I will quickly summarize where we are so far. Surat Al-Ahzab is the beginning of a cluster of surahs that talk about ta'ah, obedience, submission, istislam lillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It looks at that concept because that's the main objective for us as Muslims in our lives, is obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, following His commands, submitting to Him. We are looking at that topic from different angles. Surah Al-Ahzab is the longest surah in this cluster, and it's the most important by far, because it talks about the concept of obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in very awkward and difficult situations, when the stakes are high, when it's not easy to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command. Because sometimes you're ordered to follow His command and it's not too difficult, it's easy actually. There's a lot of incentive in doing so, and that's what we're supposed to create as a community. As a society, we're supposed to make the submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala something that people have an incentive to do from a social perspective. They feel the benefit of it, they have incentive, they want to do it, they're rewarded socially for it and personally. We're supposed to do that. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards people for the akhirah, and as a Muslim community, we're supposed to make following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands something that people want to do, they have find incentive for, not the opposite. We don't make it the most difficult thing possible. Life will do that. Life is going to take care of making it hard for everyone. We're supposed to do our best to make it as easy as we can to people, but sometimes we don't think like that. And we become very stiff. But Surah Al-Ahzab gives examples of different situations where following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands could be difficult, could be hard, could be awkward. And the first few ayat, I'm not going to talk about the introduction because I talked about that too many times, but the first few examples was al-mudahara. Al-mudahara is when a man does not really divorce his wife, nor does he hold on to her as a wife, and that's something that Arabs had done for centuries, and it was made haram almost instantly within the Quran, within the first time. The moment they moved to Medina and the ahkam started to be revealed, that was made haram immediately, and that was very awkward for men, and they didn't like it, but whether they liked it or not, that was going to be the ruling. And the second issue was talking about aitam, talking about orphans, and the rulings regarding orphans and how they have to hold on to their names, even though you're supposed to bring them into your homes, we're supposed to bring them into our homes and raise them as if they are our own, even though they are not. And that has to be, and there has to be some distinction between your blood descendants and those who are not blood relatives to you, and that's okay. You can still treat them like children, see them like children, speak to them like your children, but they're not your children, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, this is an awkward thing to talk about. It's touchy. People don't like listening to it. Another part of it was the issue of mawarith. This last ayah we talked about. What mawarith is inheritance, and who takes the inheritance, and who doesn't get the inheritance, and these are also issues that cause a lot of difficulties. That was just the introduction of Surat Al-Ahzab. Just to start off with a couple of items that no one likes listening to, and you find yourself, wow, this is going to be heavy coming forward. And then immediately after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُمْ وَمِنْكُم مِّن نُوحٍ وَإِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى بْنِ مَرْيَمَ. He talks about the covenants and the pledges that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took from all His prophets, and He named in this ayah the ulul azm min rusul, the strong-willed prophets, meaning the prophets who are the most famous, the highest status under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the ones that suffered the most as prophets throughout their lives. And He talked about how He took a very thick and very difficult and very heavy covenant from all of them, and He will ask them about their honesty on the Day of Judgment. If you're honest about following your pledges and following through with your covenants, then you're going to be asked about that, because just saying it is not enough. It's not nearly enough. It's about, can you actually prove that you believed in it through your actions, through standing your ground when things were difficult, because that's when it really matters. Again, it's easy to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the times of raha, during times of ease. It's not a difficult thing to do, specifically if you're living in a society where everyone's doing it. Actually, it's hard to do the opposite. It becomes difficult for you to do the opposite because everyone is pulling you towards that concept. And then but things change, and it becomes hard to hold on to the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why the Sahaba, the early Sahaba, their names are forever immortalized in Islamic history. You don't forget Abu Bakr or Umar or Uthman or Ali or Zubayr or Talha, or Sa'id or Sa'ad or Abdul Rahman. You don't forget these names, in Bilal, because these names, they continued. They were there during the hard times. Even in, if you remember when we studied Surat Al-Hadid, we didn't study Surat Al-Hadid here, we studied it somewhere else. So in Surat Al-Hadid, there's a differentiation. لا يستوي منكم من أنفق من قبل الفتح وقاتل أولئك أعظم درجة من الذين أنفقوا من بعد وقاتلوا. It's not equal those of you who believed in Islam and put their weight and sacrificed their money and their lives and their time for it before Fatah Makkah, and those who did it after Fatah Makkah. It's not the same. Those who did it before get way more ajr, are considered much higher. That's why we don't see the equal. Ali ibn Abi Talib and Uthman ibn Affan and Umar ibn al-Khattab and Abu Bakr to Muawiyah and Amr ibn al-As and Khalid ibn Walid. Even though these are all Sahaba, but we cannot see them equal, because the Quran doesn't see the equality here. The Quran doesn't see the equality because these people accepted Islam much later. Meaning they weren't there for the hard times when you were required, when holding on to Islam meant that you could easily lose your life any moment, and there's really not many Muslims around anyway. So if you left Islam, Islam would be empty. There would be no one there. You're one of 10 or one of 50 or one of 200. The value of that is immeasurable. You cannot measure that. And this is what the surah is talking about, giving examples. And then we began talking about the first story, which is the longest story in the surah, but by far the most interesting. The story of Surat AlAhzab, the battle of Al-Khandaq, the battle of the trench. And I talked about how Yahud Bani Nadir, the Jews of Bani Nadir who were removed from Medina because they tried to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ at one point, they started plotting against the Prophet ﷺ by talking to the Arab tribes of Arabia and seeing if they can get people to put together a big army. And they got Quraysh on board, and they got Ghatafan, and they got Banu Salaman, but they got a large number of Banu Sulaim. They got a large number of tribes, and altogether it was around 10,000 warriors. And that is a very large number of warriors to be from different tribes fighting in Arabia. Meaning, for it to be from one tribe, that's understandable, but for it to be people from different backgrounds and different religious groups, that's unheard of, that's unprecedented within Arabia. And the 10,000 started marching towards Medina. And I told you the story how the Prophet ﷺ sat with the Sahaba and asked them for their opinion, and the opinion or the idea that stuck was digging the trench. The trench was huge, it was very long, it's a long story. I will be covering it, inshallah, in the Sirah Halaqah within the next few months, but in more detail. But the idea is a 5-kilometer long trench. 3 by 4. So you can imagine it's like a room, meaning the width and the depth of the trench is like a room, and you would have to dig if you were there on that day, because of 1,500 people digging. He divided it into groups of 20, into 60 groups of 25. He had people who were running the groups or leaders within those groups, and then he had other leaders. So he had it all organized so that everyone would do their job and get it done on time. There was very little provision in Medina at the time. People were very hungry, and to the point where they couldn't, the Prophet ﷺ during those days, some of the Ansar came to him and said, Ya Rasulullah, we are so hungry, and they lifted their gallabiya or their aba, and they showed how they have a rock tied to the stomach. I know you've heard these things, and you've never done it before. I've never done it before. Try it though one day. I've tried it, just for the benefit of kind of learning, because this is brought up so many times in the seerah, you wonder about it. So try it one day when you're doing siyam in summer. We still have one or two more summers, where Ramadan is going to be in it. Try it, but not here in Canada. It doesn't really care. You don't get hungry here. You have to go live somewhere where it's much hotter, where by the time it's Maghrib time, you are literally, you can't move your lips anymore. You're so thirsty, you're so hungry. When you pull a rock to the stomach, it makes the stomach cavity smaller. Now, hunger as a feeling is generated in the brain based on the size of the empty sac, which is the stomach. So if you have a large stomach, then you're going to be very hungry. If you have a small stomach, then you'll be less hungry. That's how it is, just biologically speaking. So the stomach size will dictate how hungry you are when it's empty. So the bigger the empty sac is, the hungrier you feel. The smaller the empty sac is, the less hungry you feel. That's why people who are extremely obese, sometimes they will go through certain surgeries, whether it's called a bypass surgery. What they do is they cut off the stomach, they make the stomach really small. It can only have a few grapes in it. Right, so they can only, if you eat a couple of grapes or a couple of small luqam at a time in order for them to nourish themselves. But what they benefit from is that they don't feel as hungry biologically. Maybe psychologically there's some problems there that they still haven't fixed properly. But biologically they don't feel as hungry because the sac is smaller. They don't feel it anymore. So what they do is when you pull a rock to your stomach, it pushes against the stomach cavity and it kind of sticks it together. So it makes it, in a pseudo manner, it makes it smaller. Not really smaller, but it just kind of makes it starts to feel smaller. So it's a tactic that people would use in Arabia to make themselves feel less hungry. So they did this, Ya Rasulullah, look, We have rocks. So the Prophet ﷺ smiled, and then he lifted his, and he had two on his stomach. He had tied to his stomach. So it's very, very difficult times. Now the ayat are going to focus on a certain aspect of that difficulty. It's not going to tell the whole story that I'm telling you. It's going to tell a certain part of that difficulty, which is what I want us to really focus on, because you can hear the story in detail, every part of it elsewhere. When we're reading the surah, it's important that you focus on what the Quran chose of all the things that happen to focus on, so that we can actually benefit from it, and we can take the lessons, inshallah. So the first ayah was Ya ladhina amanu udhkuru ni'matallahi alaykum, O those who believe, remember or recall the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When soldiers or warriors came to you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent on them His own soldiers, and He sent on them rih, wind, and soldiers you did not see, and tools and creations that He commanded to serve Him in a certain way that you did not see, and then they left you. So remember the blessing. The story begins from the end. It tells you that things worked out. Remember when things worked out? Remember when things you thought were not going to work out? It was impossible. You guys were going to get clobbered, and Islam was going to end. Remember that feeling? Remember the blessing, how we ended it, subhanahu wa ta'ala, with some wind? You think about armies and 10,000 warriors and how much money is being put into this, and the plotting and the planning, wind ended it. And when you think about it, it happens a lot. Sometimes, you've been planning for a picnic for like a month, and you're talking to your family, you have it all, the food ready, you phone everyone, then you walk out the house, then the weather just sends you right back inside, and it's cancelled. And it reminds you of how weak we are, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands it all. But for this is an army, of course, there's no comparison between going for a picnic and an army coming, trying to demolish another one. But I'm just trying to get you to think that this is, and yet wind ended it. What other creations did He use subhanahu wa ta'ala that we did not see? Fear, treason, right? Fitna, hatred between people and misunderstandings, and it ended. All it took was the loyalty and the alliances to kind of fall to pieces, and that was the end of it. And the Muslims were at a certain point, thinking, all right. So we'll recite, inshallah, the ayah after that starts to describe what happened. It's describing for us the moment the Muslims saw the actual army of AlAhzab coming their way. All right, so imagine yourself, you just finished digging the trench. It's been 10 days working 15, 16 hours every single day on very, very little provision. And finally it's done. Do you know for sure this is going to work? Do they know for sure this is going to work 100%? No one knows. They have no idea. They never tried this before. It seems like it'll work. There's enough rubble and rocks and soil on their side to make a small barricade so that they can hide behind and protect the trench. It seems like it's steep enough and wide enough. Doesn't seem there's any more openings anywhere else around Medina. They can't enter from anywhere else. This should work, but they don't know for sure. But this is what they're saying to themselves. And then suddenly they see them in the horizon coming. Starts with one person, 2, 3, 4. And it spreads, and you're like, okay, it's done now. And then it keeps on spreading and spreading until the horizon, all you see are soldiers. In every direction they're looking, all they see is soldiers at the horizon. And it's not one line of it, it's 2 and 3 and 10,000 people marching your way. People of Medina had never seen anything like that before. They had never witnessed it. So this is what the ayat, what they're focusing on is that moment. So read the ayat, inshallah, we'll talk about, or we'll explain, inshallah, the details of the meaning. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So it's ayah number 10, inshallah. إِذْ جَاءُوكُم مِّن فَوْقِكُمْ وَمِنْ أَسْفَلَ مِنْكُمْ. So let's agree to the mudud. We haven't done this for a while, so let's remind ourselves. So the med is a 4 count. Any med that you see, so look at the word ja'ukum, you see a small cowboy hat on top of the alif, that's a med. That med, every time you see it, you do a 4 count. You can just do it on your knee, or you can just count it on your fingers, whatever you want to do. Unless I tell you it's 6. I'll tell you beforehand if it's 6 so that you can do 6, but every other one you see is going to be always 4. So إِذْ جَاءُوكُم. So that way there's more, just so that not everyone's doing their own thing. We'll continue, inshallah. There's more to come, so we'll use that, inshallah, as the rule of thumb. وَإِذْ زَاغَتِ الْأَبْصَارُ وبلغت القلوب الحناجر وتظنون بالله الظنونا هنالك ابتلي المؤمنون وزلزلوا زلزالا شديدا. All right. إذ جاءوكم من فوقكم. The moment when they came from above, meaning from the northern part of your city. Another interpretation is that they came from the northern tribes. من فوقكم, from the tribes that are north to Medina. وَمِنْ أَسْفَلَ مِنْكُمْ, from the southern tribes to Medina, which is Quraysh. So the northern tribes are Ghatafan, Uyayna bin Hisn and his group. And the southern tribes are Quraysh, Abu Sufyan and his group. So two meanings, two ways to look at this, that they came from the min fawqikum, from the northern tribes, wa min asfala minkum, from the southern tribes. Asfal is under. So again, looking at the map, top and bottom is north and south, basically, when in most cultures when they speak in a figure, as a figure of speech. And another interpretation is that they came from above Medina and from the southern part of Medina, because some narrations, or actually many of them, they accept the idea that Al-Ahzab, most of them, the majority of Al-Ahzab, of the armies, were focused on the northern part of Medina where the trench was. But some of them came from the south, hoping that Banu Qurayza, the Jews of Banu Qurayza, would allow them through, because that way it would be a quick wipeout. Another interpretation, and the one that I think is more prominent in the understanding of this, إِذْ جَاءُوكُم مِّن فَوْقِكُم, when the Ahzab came from the north, وَمِنْ أَسْفَلَ مِنْكُم, when you found out that Banu Qurayza were going to betray the treaty, and you found out that they were coming, and this is the moment that we're talking about. Because that's the moment where the Prophet ﷺ was seen to be the most concerned moment of his life. Meaning, you looked at his face, ﷺ, you knew he was worrying. And that was not something very common to see. He was ﷺ quite often a very open, kind of easygoing. You feel comfortable when you look at him. You get a feel of comfort when you deal with him, ﷺ. On those days, during those times, when the rumor or the idea that Banu Qurayza were considering of betraying the Muslims, and they were preparing for it, and they had already come to into the details of it, the Prophet ﷺ became very, very worried. He became very worried, because at this point that meant this was going to end. All it had to do was Banu Qurayza, if they attack, then it's going to end, and if they just open the gates, it'll end as well. The Quraysh, the Ahzab will just send a couple of thousand people to come from the south, and then from south and from north, you can't stop it with 1,500 warriors. You can't stop 10,000 people, right? إِذْ جَاءُوكُم مِّن فَوْقِكُم وَمِنْ أَسْفَلَ مِنْكُم, or it could mean that they came from everywhere, and it looked to you like they were coming from everywhere, because top and bottom kind of encompasses all the directions. So when you looked at them, and that's what basically what happened, when they look at the horizon, it was filled. It was just warriors coming from everywhere, and a lot of the Muslims just stood there, and looking at each other, not sure what is this gonna hold, and is this trench gonna hold? How long are these people gonna stay? I mean, the siege could go on for months. Medina is poor as it is. Like, there's not much provision in Medina to begin with. How are we going to eat? How are we going to feed our kids? Like, it's going to be this. We don't know. Like, these are the thoughts that the Muslims are thinking about. وَإِذْ زَاغَتِ الْأَبْصَارِ, and in the moment when absar is eyesight. Zagha is when something inharaf. Inharaf means it's no longer going and it's not behaving in its regular way. It's taking a detour. It's going into in a different direction. And this is a figure of speech in Arabic. Zagha al-basar. ما زاغ البصر وما طغى in Surah Al-Najm. So the Quran kind of uses this phrase a number of times. It's a figure of speech that means when you're so scared or confused that your eyes aren't set somewhere. When you're looking everywhere. You can't seem to focus on one thing. You're confused, you're scared, and you're nervous. And it's usually a sign of extreme anxiety. زاغت الأبصار. When you're, I think in Arabic, in English they say the eyesight goes wild. Or I think I've heard that before. I've read that somewhere, but I think that's something that they use. Maybe I'm wrong. But in Arabic, it's a figure of speech. It means زاغت الأبصار means the eyes are going left and right a lot. Usually, when you're speaking to someone, he's looking forward, and that's the 99% of situations. But when your eyes are going back and forth, left and right, زاغت الأبصار, it's usually there's something extreme happening. You have to imagine someone who lost something important to him, and he's walking around looking for it, and he's very anxious. His eyesight is going everywhere, trying to find or locate what he lost. وَإِذْ زَاغَتِ الْأَبْصَارُ وَبَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرُ, and the hearts elevated to the throats, or the hearts reached the throats. Another figure of speech. The heart never goes to the throat, and this is just an Arabic figure of speech that is used quite often, also in the Quran. بَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرُ means that you could feel, it's when you can feel your heart pumping or beating in your throat or in your head. And again, that's usually when you're extremely afraid. When you get very afraid, you can start hearing your heartbeats, or you can start you feel you can't swallow anymore. Another symptom of the fight and flight reaction, the hormonal reaction that we have, or the neurological reaction that we have as human beings, is that your mouth goes dry, right? And it's hard to swallow when you get really scared. Or you get very anxious, or you get very angry. Have you ever got very too upset, or worked up to the point where you feel your lips are dry? Why? Because this is just how we are. This is how we react to situations that we consider to be threatening to us, or we feel that they may be fatal, or we're in danger, or we're very upset. وَبَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرُ. You can feel your heart and your throat beating. You can't swallow properly. You can hear it beat, and it's right here. And of course, this is a figure of speech. It's not up there. Yes?
If you just say, we're going to check your homework today, half the kids will go, you know what I'm saying?
Not anymore. I'm a teacher, and I'm telling you, not anymore. That's gone. It used to be. وَبَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرُ. And now the hearts are up at the throats. وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ. And you have assumptions. And you start to have assumptions about Allah. تَظُنُّون is having an assumption. Billahi al-dhununa, to repeat, وَتَظُنُّونَ الظُّنُونَ, to say it like that means you have different and a variety of assumptions. It didn't say what the assumptions were. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refused here to tell us what some of the Sahaba and the people standing there, what some of the assumptions that came to their minds were. He didn't tell us what they were. But He told us that assumptions were made at that moment. So let's recap quickly. When they came from the northern and southern tribes towards you, and your eyes grew wild, and you felt your hearts in your throats, and you start to have assumptions in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not general assumptions. وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ. Now this is an important part of the surah. Remember I talked to you guys about this last time. One of the reasons that these surahs sometimes aren't discussed is sometimes people don't understand how to deal with these things. The Sahaba were human beings. So were the prophets, by the way. They were human beings. They were not anything, they were not beyond being human at the end. Being human dictates that there's a number of traits and attributes that we all have, that that we share. At times of extreme difficulty, is it even acceptable or practical for us to assume or expect people not to feel fear, not to feel extreme fear, for their eyes not to grow wild and their hearts not to reach their throats? Is that something that you're not supposed to have? Is this a sign of little iman or of no iman? Are you understanding what I'm saying here? Is that how we've understood being a good Muslim as? That in difficult situations we're not even supposed to be able to express how concerned and how scared we are. وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ. And then thoughts and assumptions come to mind, and doubts are running in. You're not sure anymore. You're not sure. What is this? Are we going to make it? Are we going to win this? Are we going to survive? Are the Muslims going to survive? Is the Ummah going to survive? I don't know. Could it be that this is the end of it? Right? These ideas came to the mind of the Sahaba, of many of the Sahaba. None of that is wrong. See, this is the problem. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is what's going to come later in the ayat. Is what the munafiqun and alladhina fi qulubihim marad are going to say. And then what they're going to do. That is what's going to be problematic. Not what they think and what they feel. What they feel and what they think, these are natural reactions to these extreme situations. The Prophet ﷺ got very concerned. You could see the concern in his face, ﷺ, when he found out that Banu Qurayza were on the breach of betraying him. You could see it in his face. He didn't want anyone, all the Muslims to know all at once. He had two people go, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, Sa'd bin Mu'adh and Sa'd ibn Ubadah, to go and speak to the leaders of Banu Qurayza and see what they're going to tell them and make sure that the piece of information is true. And they did. And he told them, when you come back, don't tell me that they betrayed. Just talk to me in code. Tell me if they betrayed in code if they did. And if they didn't betray, then come and announce it, because it's good news. Give the people good news if it's true. Don't lie. He never lies to anyone. Nor did he ever allow lying. You're never allowed to lie to the public ever. But if it's bad news, tell me in code, because I have to find a way how I'm going to explain it to the people. Because when you tell them, okay, now we're going to be crushed, because we don't have a trench in the southern part. We didn't think we needed one. Based on what we had discussed with Banu Qurayza, we should be good. The walls of the forts should hold for forever. You can never actually penetrate them. If we knew this was going to happen, we would have dug a trench in the southern part as well to make sure that we were safe. So they went and they asked, and they found out that they betrayed. So they came back and they told them, Adul Waqara. They told the Prophet, Adul Waqara is an example of another act of betrayal that happened a few years back, where they killed a number of Muslims who were sent to teach. A bunch of guys who were sent to teach. Around 70 young men were sent to teach Islam and Quran, and they slaughtered them all in a different story that we'll talk about maybe in a different time. So he said, Adul Waqara ya Rasulullah. That's it. So the Prophet said, Allahu Akbar. Nusirna bi'izzatillah. We are going to be victorious in the name of Allah, to bring up the morale. And then he goes and sits and what are we going to do? What are we going to do? He starts to gather people together to come up with a plan. And of course, we'll talk about it, inshallah, what happened at the end. But this is not the focus. Again, this is not what the ayah is focusing on. The ayah is reminding them. Remember the blessing of how we sent them away? Remember when the soldiers came to you and we sent on them some wind and told them to left? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kana bima ta'maluna basira. And He was watching everything you did. Remember when they came from northern and southern parts of the country? Remember when your eyes grew wild and your hearts were in your throats, and you start to have assumptions in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember that? وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ هُنَالِكَ At that point, أُبْتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. At that moment, أُبْتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, meaning the mu'mins, the believers, were tried. They were put to the test. That's what ibtila means. Ibtila means that you're put to a test. You're not tested. I find that to be a different, it sometimes has a different meaning in the minds of people who listen to it. You're put to the test. You're going to see, let's see what you're going to do. That is the time where we really tested the mu'mins, where we really put them to the test. Well, Ya Rabb, so many other points, there were different tests, like Badr was a test, Uhud was a test. But the only place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pointed out, that is the moment where I truly put the believers to the test, was the Battle of Khandaq. And that's why it's in Surat AlAhzab, because that's when things reached a pinnacle of fear, despair, where it seemed like there was going to be no hope. The moment that piece of information came that Banu Qurayza were going to open the gates, we're done for it. We can't. The Prophet ﷺ at that point, what he did, he had to send around 400 of the warriors, of the Muslim fighters, to go and guard the southern part of the gates, just kind of keep them closed. But that means out of the 1,500 who were guarding the Khandaq, 400 left. Now there's less people. The density of people who are guarding the trench aren't as high. Now Quraysh can poke holes. Now Quraysh can look for weaknesses. Now Quraysh can maybe sacrifice a few people and get across, and then get a few logs, and the horses can start galloping in. It became very, very scary. The Prophet ﷺ didn't sleep very well those nights. Aisha said that she never heard him snore, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. ينام له غطيط عليه الصلاة والسلام إلا تلك الليالي. In those nights he would sleep. He was so tired because he was awake sometimes 20 hours, 24 hours at a time. He would come home and he would lay down for like 2-3 hours, take it just quickly to get some rest. And you could hear him, and you could hear him snore. That's how tired he was. She says that, tells us a story that once he was sleeping, and Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas came as he's going home, because his time on call was over. He's going to go his turn to rest. So he comes and he says, Ya Rasulullah, do you need anything? right? And he speaks, he doesn't ask first. So the Prophet ﷺ jumps up. قال ما الخبر يا سعد? What's wrong, Sa'd? فقال لا شيء يا رسول الله. Nothing, I just wanted to see if you wanted anything. فقال الخندق يا سعد. Go see the trench. What do you want from me? I don't want anything. Just stick to the trench and make sure things are. فتقول عائشة فما نسيتها لسعد. I never forgave Sa'd for that day. I never forgave Sa'd for the day he startled the Prophet ﷺ. He had just laid down and took he was just maybe 15 minutes in, and he's coming just to say, what do you need, Ya Rasulullah? Do this at a different time, right? Go. What does he need? Go make sure that they don't come galloping to his home through the trench. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. هنالك ابتلي المؤمنون. On that day, believers were put to the test, and this is what we're talking about in Surat AlAhzab. This is the focus of the surah, about true moments when you're put to the test. Are you capable of standing your ground? So if you're going through a time of your life where you don't feel comfortable, you're not happy, it seems to you that there's a lot of problems coming all at once, and you're not sure what's going to happen next. You feel that there's a lot of insecurity regarding your future. The number of problems and dilemmas that you have to deal with are just increasing. They weren't like that a while back. Don't despair. This is what the surah is telling. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just putting you to the test to see, will you submit and obey now, or will you not? Will you continue to do it, or are you going to give up? Or is something going to change suddenly? Are you no longer going to be able to continue? Because this is where you're actually put to the test. You may succeed and you may fail, but this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it. He gives you a moment where everything isn't working. When you think about it, let's take a moment and think about that, the story of Al-Ahzab in terms of what was going for the Muslims. Number-wise, they were very low in numbers in comparison to the enemy that they were fighting. So they were around a ninth or eighth of their enemy. That's one thing. Second thing is that they were being cornered in their own hometown. See, when you're fighting outside, there's this feel of relief because neither your children nor your wives nor your livestock and your wealth is there it's not compromised. You're not scared for it. So it's all you're going to lose is just you, and that's a better feeling. And then knowing that it may harm them. Being cornered in your hometown is it's a very scary feeling. The other thing is that there was not much provision in Medina. It wasn't like Medina at that time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it a lot of food. Here's an extra amount of crops this year. That would be a nice part of the story, wouldn't it? You would like that if I told you that part of the story. But if I told you this, so they were put under the siege, but subhanallah, He gave them so much food in Medina that year. They would eat and they were full, and Allah, that was a barakah. No, they were starving. They couldn't find food. I'll share with you an example. They were so hungry that one day Jabir came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, inna inda zawjati hifnat sha'ir wa sadr dajaja. I have a chicken breast and some barley, like a small at home. Ya Rasulullah, come and eat. I've been working with you for the last week. You haven't eaten in the last 5 days. Come have some food. So he said, Wahdi ya Jabir? Alone? You want me to come eat alone, ya Jabir? And he looked at him, he wasn't happy. So Jabir is like, Ya Rasulullah, I was going to give it to my kids. I decided to give it to you, but it's all right. Bring Abu Bakr, ya Rasulullah. Fine, bring your. فقال وحدنا يا جابر. Just the two of us. فقال ائتي بعمر. You want to bring Umar? فقال وحدنا يا جابر. Just us, just the three of us. فقال يا رسول الله هو حفنة شعير وصدر دجاجة. Maybe you didn't hear me, ya Rasulullah. It's a chicken breast and some barley. It's barely a small. فقال نأكل وحدنا يا جابر. You want us to eat alone, ya Jabir? يقول حتى استحيت. Until I felt ashamed. I'm like, I wish I never brought up the whole thing at all. I didn't know. I thought I did something good, and apparently I didn't do anything good. So the Prophet ﷺ stood up and said, اليوم غداؤكم يا أهل الخندق عند جابر. Oh, warriors of the trench, today you're going to have food at Jabir's house. Jabir almost had a stroke, not altogether, but he almost had a stroke. He ran home and he's panicking, telling his wife, I told you, it's your fault. You told me to tell Rasulullah to have the food, and now he's bringing the whole army. So she told him, did you tell him what we had? Like, did you lie to him and told him we had like a couple of camels? Or what did you tell him? No, I told him we had a chicken breast and some barley. She said Rasulullah SAW knows what he's doing. So he calmed down. He's like, all right, he took the food, he put it inside the room, and he's waiting. And the Prophet ﷺ is coming, 1,500 people are coming, literally 1,500 people, I'm not giving a number. Yeah, actually 1,500 people. He said, all right, I need to organize, I need 10 people at a time. And Jabir's like, what do you mean 10 people? It's 10 people and that's the end of it. Yeah, one group will come in, go eat it, and we're done. Why? We don't need to waste people's time, Ya Rasulullah, in organizing. And they organized anyway. And then he entered and he said, no one touch the food. He entered the house. No one touch anything. All right, Jabir, you're going to be the guy on the door to enter 10 people at a time. So I stood there like, sure, fine, go enter. I told you what it was, Ya Rasulullah. They enter, and he stands out there, and they take like 10 minutes. Like, what are they doing in there? What are people doing? So he was told not to look. So he doesn't look. And then 10 minutes later, they walk out. Alhamdulillah, thanks, Jabir, wa jazakallah khair for everyone. I'm like, no, you're kidding me, right? There's some joke here. Ya Rasulullah, you bring... In one group at a time, they all entered and they ate. Every single group until they were totally full. And then the Prophet called Jabir. Ya Jabir, your turn. And then he came and ate. And after they were all done, Jabir said, I looked at the food. It was just a small portion of the barley was missing and a small piece of the chicken breast was done. And everyone had eaten. Now it was this is not. We cannot even, this is not the level of a miracle. The word miracle is a huge word. This is the barakah of ta'am. This is the barakah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the Prophet ﷺ in certain situations. It was only once, meaning out of the 15 days of prior to the Battle of Ahzab, they were allowed to eat that once, that one time within this whole story, but there was nothing else. They were hungry. Now that is a fact that we need to, to a certain extent deal with. Did they have more artillery? I mean, did they have better swords or better bows and arrows? No, they didn't. So they weren't superior from an artillery point of view. They didn't have better numbers. They didn't have good provision. They were cornered in their hometown, and they were being betrayed by those who they had alliances with. Nothing was going well. Now I need you to drop that situation on your own life for a moment. Take that situation and think about it yourself. Because you and I know that this ended well, but they didn't. And this is what the ayah is telling you. Remember when they came from everywhere and your grew wild and your hearts were in your throats and you start having assumptions and you were put to the test like never before? وَزُلْزِلُوا زِلْزَالًا شَدِيدًا. And you were shaken. An extreme and vigorous and violent shake. What do you mean? Was there an earthquake? No, there's no earthquake. But they were shaken as human beings, as people. Their faith was shaken. Their confidence was shaken. Their bravery, everything about them was shaken at that moment. It's normal. Of course it's going to be shaken. You and I go through a fraction of that, and we struggle to hold on to our faith properly. We struggle to keep a smile on our face, and we struggle to still come to the masjid. We struggle to be kind to our wives and our kids. With less than that, with less meaning we have more in our lives anyway. Like even at the worst moments, we still have food in the fridge and enough to get through the month, and we have someone to take care of us, and we're healthy. We're not sick or ill, and we have our loved ones around us, and we still struggle. Imagine if everything is going wrong in your life, everything. Another narration that we have about the time of Ahzab is that people were very ill during those days. Medina has illnesses in it. It was a diseased area. One of the reasons that the Prophet ﷺ never thought of going to Yathrib to begin with, like one of the reasons he didn't consider Yathrib, he went to Ta'if first and he tried everything else before Yathrib, because Yathrib was a war zone and it was known to be a diseased area. I mean, you would go there, you would catch a lot of diseases. You have the flu, you'd have stomach aches, it was hard to eat, it was, whatever the reason was, it was not a very healthy area. And the Sahaba, all of the Sahaba, when they first went to Medina, were sick. They were sick for a week. And some of them, Abu Bakr, there's a hadith where the Prophet was laying down sick and Abu Bakr is beside him and Bilal is beside him. And Bilal is singing about Mecca. He's saying like poetry about how beautiful Mecca is. When will I go back and sleep in that place of Mecca? And Abu Bakr starts to cry. And the Prophet says, Bilal, stop it, just stop it. None of this, I don't need more of, it's already bad as it is, So people were ill. What I'm trying to say is sometimes you take a step back and you look at your life and you look, everything's not working, and it happens. And it happens maybe more often than you hope for. And sometimes, alhamdulillah, you're lucky and you're fortunate. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you, and you don't see it it doesn't happen to you too often. But it will happen sometimes, where you take a step back and now things working. Professionally, I'm not where I want to be. Physically, I'm not even close to where I want to be. I'm getting older. My relationship with my family, not too good. My kids are not listening to me. I don't think I'm doing it right. I don't have enough money in my bank account. The future seems to suck so far. I don't know what's happening next. You look at it all and nothing's working. You can't see anything working. Just know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala هُنَالِكَ بُتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَزُلْزِلُوا زِلْزَالًا شَدِيدًا. At that moment, the believers were put to the test and they were shaken viciously. A vicious shake to see what's going to happen. Why are you shaking to see? You're going to fall? Are you going to hold on? Right? Some of them held on. Some of them fell. Some of the Sahaba made mistakes and fell. It's fine. They learned. They made istighfar and tawbah and they came back again. It's important that we can accept this, so we can study not only Surat AlAhzab, you can study Ghazwat Uhud from the Quran, and Ghazwat Badr, because a lot of these Ghazawat, there were mistakes made by some of the greatest people we know, the people that we love the most, the Sahaba. But it's okay. They're human beings. They made mistakes and we make mistakes all the time. But if we can learn from the mistakes of those before us, then inshallah we can dodge making another one. Or we can be, and another thing is that we can have more realistic expectations. I'm going to give you an example of an unrealistic expectation, just so that you guys understand what I'm talking about, why I'm bringing this up. When Ibrahim, the Prophet ﷺ's son, passed away, he was around 6-7 months old. This is way towards the end of his life, ﷺ. He was around 62 at the time when he died, or 61. All of Mecca, Medina felt very sad. And people were crying. Alayhi salatu wasalam himself was carrying Ibrahim in his, he had him all wrapped up, and he was sobbing, like he was crying, tears running down his face, and you could hear him cry. Ibn Mas'ud walks in, everyone's crying, and Ibn Mas'ud thinks that's not how a mu'min behaves. Ibn Mas'ud thinks this is not proper, you're a mu'min. This is a bad thing that happened to you. You should show perseverance, you should be strong, you should hold your ground, yada yada. So he walks in, he sees the Prophet ﷺ crying. فَقَالْ حَتَّى أَنْتَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. He says, even you? Ya Rasulullah, even you're crying? So the Prophet ﷺ looks at him and قال يا ابن مسعود إن العين لا تدمع وإن القلب لا يخشع. The eye will tear and the heart will feel sorrow. ولا نقول إلا ما يرضي ربنا. And we only say with our tongues what will please our Lord. I haven't said anything I haven't objected to God. I haven't shown him kufr. I haven't done anything wrong. It's normal for me to feel extremely sad right now. Are you understanding what I'm saying? It's normal when the Ahzab came to Medina for the Sahaba to feel extremely scared, for that fight and flight mode, for them to go into it, and for them to have dry mouths and feel their heart beatings in their throat, and for them to their eyes to widen to feel scared. It's normal, of course. If they didn't, then they wouldn't be human beings, and you couldn't learn anything from them, or they would be delusional. Like, you have to be realistic. You have to be able to see reality for what it is. It is scary. It's scary. Then be afraid. That's fine. Courage only exists if you're afraid. There's no such thing as courage if you're not afraid. If you're not afraid, then that's not courage. You can't walk around saying, I'm brave. No, you're not brave. You know what's going to happen. There's no bravery in this. You know what's happening next. How is that brave? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me what's going to happen next, why would I fear for anything? I know what's happening next. I'm fine. Like if it's bad, I'll just dodge it, and if it's good, why would I feel bad? Bravery, true bravery, and true courage is you not knowing what's going to happen next and standing your ground anyway, with all the fear and all the doubt and all the difficulty, still standing down. وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ. And you had assumptions about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that moment. Is it okay to have assumptions?
We would never promise that it's going to be easy.
Of course not. You're promised the opposite.
In the end, will be.
Sometimes some Muslims died.
Yeah, but they didn't die forever. They'll be in
there.
Inshallah, they'll be in heaven.
So you're not really promised that in this life is all going to work out. But what about the assumptions? What about the assumptions? Are the assumptions something that am I commending the assumptions? I'm saying it's a good thing that they had assumptions? No, not at all. But is it normal for these things to happen? Is it normal for you to have an assumption, a bad one? To think for a moment about something, to have a doubt for a second. Is that bad? Should you say, oh, I'm a horrible Muslim? No, of course it's going to happen. It's going to happen. The Prophet ﷺ in Sahih al-Bukhari says, نحن أحق بالشك من إبراهيم. We have more right to have doubts than Ibrahim alayhi salam did. Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he said, Ya Rabbi arini kayfa tuhyi al-mawta. Show me how do you do it? How do you resurrect the dead? أولم تؤمن? Do you not have iman? Yes, Ya Rabb, لكن ليطمئن قلبي. My heart has all these questions. I have these assumptions. I don't know. I can't imagine how it works. I can't imagine it. I can't understand it. I have some assumptions. I don't know. Show me. So he showed him. Did he show him scientifically how? No, not scientifically. He showed him how it happens. And like, oh, so it happens. He calmed down. Actually, we didn't see any of this. It's normal for you to have that. It's normal. It's a part of being a human being. If you don't have assumptions and doubts to begin with, then you never really build a healthy faith at all. Someone who never questions what he believes in at any point, never puts it to the test as well, takes time to study it, understand it, doesn't build a healthy faith. It's a normal part of being a person. The people on the day of Al-Khandaq, they had assumptions. It was normal. Of course they're going to do it. You're looking at 10,000 people surrounding you. You're deploying a plan that you've never tried before. You should at least try the plan once before you put it into practice. Any football team or basketball team, before they try the new plan, they'll do a few trials on the basketball court to see if it works out or not. You don't come up with the idea and then try it in the finals, and then see how it works out. That's insane. Don't do that. They had no choice. There was no time. They had to do it now. Will this work? No idea. Do they have some other device? Did they hear about the Khandaq and they're bringing some device that's going to allow them to come across? They don't know. They don't know. وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ. That was the day that mu'mins, their faith was put to test, and they were shaken, a vigorous and violent shake. So now we're all in the same zone. But now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you how people differed in what they said and how they behaved. Yes?
One step backwards is the Dhunnuna Billah, they had assumptions of Allah.
Yeah, of Allah. Yeah, that's what it's saying word for word.
Assumptions of like what's going to happen to our situation, what's happening.
No, about Allah. Dhunnuna Billah. Is Allah going to give us victory? Is He going to let us go? Is what He told us going to happen or not? It happens. The assumptions come. The difference is not in the assumptions. The difference is in what they said and what they did. Meaning the mu'mins who had stronger iman, what they said and did was very different from what the munafiqeen alladhina fi qulubihim marad said and did. You're going to see examples of it in the ayat. The ayat are going to focus on the differences between what these people said and did and what these people said and did. And that's what we're supposed to learn from. However, the assumptions, if you look at it, they're normal. I mean, they're generalized. Everyone had these assumptions at that moment. No one knew what was going to happen next. Some of them were good assumptions, most of them were bad, but that was what happens. And then the ayat go down to talk about the details. So let's just read one ayah, inshallah, before the time is up. And this is a very interesting part of the ayah, inshallah. وَإِذْ يَقُولُ الْمُنَافِقُونَ وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِم مَّرَضٌ
وَإِذْ يَقُولُ الْمُنَافِقُونَ
وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِم مَّرَضٌ مَّا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ ما وعدنا الله ورسوله إلا غرورا. And on that moment, so now the differences start to become much more apparent. Al-munafiqun, the hypocrites, وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِم مَرَضٌ, and those who had diseases within their hearts. And this is a very, very important phrase. وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِم مَرَضٌ. It's an extremely important phrase here that needs to be studied and looked at into much more detail. It's around the Quran in different places. You'll find the concept of الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِم مَرَضٌ in a lot of different parts of the Quran. It means those who have diseases in their heart. It's not talking about clogged up arteries or insufficient valves within the heart. This is talking about the figurative heart. It's talking about the soul. It's talking about nafs. Those who have problems within their nafs, meaning those who have issues of generalized doubt, meaning they live a life of doubt. They didn't have an assumption at a moment of difficulty, and now I'm kind of differentiating for you the two concepts. It's one thing for you to have an assumption in an extreme moment of difficulty. It's a different thing for you to be constantly in a state of doubt, meaning everything for you, nothing for you is clear. You have no grasp on anything at all. No matter how much time or effort you spend trying to understand something, you can't seem to come to doubt. You're always in the state of doubt. Or you're someone who is oblivious and indifferent to what's happening around you, or there's arrogance or vanity or envy or hatred or any of these diseases. Over 25 different diseases that can affect the heart. If these diseases are left if they are not purified. If you remember when we studied Surat Al-Shams a number of months ago, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took an oath by everything He created that we can observe, and He said, indeed those who purify their souls will be successful in this life and the hereafter, and those who fail to do so will find disappointment in this life and in the hereafter. They'll be disappointed by what's going to happen later if you don't do it, because these diseases of the heart, they're like, you know, viruses in your software. The moment you need to work a certain program or get things working, it'll bring it all down. It'll stop. It'll hold you back, and it won't function properly because there was something that you didn't fix that you should have. At that moment, when does it show? This is what we're learning right now. When do these diseases of the heart become most harmful? At a moment like this. Right now, we're sitting around each other. We have no idea what diseases of the heart exist in any of us. I don't know what's in you, and you don't know what's inside of me either. It's impossible for us to figure that out. However, at a moment of difficulty, you will find out everything about yourself. You will know all the little deficits that you have. You'll know all of them. They'll come out. They'll come screaming out. They're like hiding somewhere in the heart that you can't find them. You're trying to find them. You're trying to purify yourself, but they're good at hiding. They're good at keeping themselves well secured and hidden away. And then at a moment of difficulty, they'll come screaming out. And they'll ruin things for you, and they can cause you to make mistakes that you regret for the rest of your life. I'm going to give you one. This is not the one that this surah is going to talk about. I'm talking about one of those diseases that affect us here more often, and probably not the same one that affected the people of Al-Khandaq at the time. Anger. Anger is a disease of the heart. Specifically, most Middle Eastern human beings are men, specifically the majority of people are men. Middle Eastern men are known to be temperamental. They have tempers. It's a known thing. You have a temper. You're all fun and quiet now, and you seem very calm. All it takes is pushing maybe 3 buttons. Just find 3 buttons, 1, 2, 3, and then Hawaii's volcano will explode, and then everything, and then suddenly everything is up for grabs, and you've seen it before at one point or another. You've felt it happen, erupting inside of you, and then you just hold it down really, really well. Anger is an example of a disease of the heart that can let you down at a moment where you need not to the most. When things are really, when things get really, really difficult in life, what do we know? What is the thing that we know people do when they're stressed out? That's when they start to act up, right? That's when if you remember when you're a kid, if you're at some point your dad was yelling at you or unhappy, or your mom would say, oh, it's hard now. He got fired, or there's not much money in the bank, or something went wrong. And that's supposed to be an acceptable excuse. That's how we were raised, that it's okay when I'm going through difficulties, it's okay for me to start acting up and start behaving in a way that's not proper and maybe abusing people around me, or who said that's okay? This is the example of fi qulubihim marad. Difficult situation will bring out the qulub, fi qulubihim marad. It's not wrong for you to have this. This is normal. Of course you have, and I have. Everyone has diseases in their heart. Small little attributes that they didn't fix, they didn't notice, that they look, they draw a blind eye towards, you don't want to think about. But moments like these will bring them forward, and it gives you an opportunity to know who you are and to work on them and change them. So the next time a difficulty like this happens, you're not going to behave in the same way. You're not going to do the same thing. And that's the point that we're supposed to learn from that one phrase in the ayah. And when the hypocrites and those who have diseases in their heart, this is what they said at that moment. Everyone had the assumptions, had certain degrees of them, different types. But they said, مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ إِلَّا غُرُورًا. All that Allah and His Prophet ever promised us were delusions. It was just a delusion. Ghurur, the word ghurur, is when you think something good is going to come from something bad. That's what a ghurur is. وَغَرَّكُمْ بِاللَّهِ الْغَرُورِ. You think something good is going to come from a bad action or from a bad source. It's a delusion. You don't know. You think it's going to work out well. So what they're saying, this is what they're saying. They're saying that we thought something good was going to come from all of this, but something bad is going to come instead. Meaning all that Allah and His Prophet ever promised us is just a delusion. They told us of victory. The Prophet ﷺ said, نُصِرْنَا بِعِزَّةِ اللَّهِ فُتِحَتْ فَارِسْ فُتِحَتْ Rum. You tell them about how one day you will conquer Persia and conquer the Romans. And one day things will change drastically for the Muslims. It was all a delusion. It was all a lie.
But it wasn't really.
Yeah, but this is right. And you're seeing they said it. They said, مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ إِلَّا غُرُورًا. All we were ever promised by Allah and His Prophet was a delusion, it was a lie. It's
What
kind
about
of
a person who's maghrur? How does that?
Yeah, so maghrur, he believes something is going to come from himself. He believes good is coming from himself that isn't there. That's what maghrur is. That's how it's taken from. Meaning you think so much of yourself, so you overestimate what's going to come from you or what you are compared to what you really are. Meaning we're ibad, we're servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone who is maghrur thinks himself to be more than that, more than a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he treats people differently and he acts in a different way. It has the same, the same concept is there. But the word ghurur, that's what it is. It's a delusion. And it's a delusion in terms of thinking something good is going to come from something bad. Sometimes the opposite, but mostly that. The Muslims didn't say that. You'll see in the second page, if you're in a hurry, if you can't wait, you can go to the second page of the last ayah and read it just so your heart feels, so you can calm down. And you can read what the mu'mins say. They said something different. Right? But they all had at one point or the other some degree of assumptions. They were all scared, all of them. All of them felt the fear. Some of them, most of them had the assumptions, different levels of it. But then the difference was in the behavior. You see, you're not held accountable. I'll end with this, inshallah. We'll read ayah number 13, because I have to explain ayah number 13 quite deeply. You're not held accountable for what you think. Thoughts come to your mind all the time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not punish you for thoughts. He punishes you for intentions that lead to later on behaviors or things you say. He holds accountable human beings for what they say intentionally, consciously, obviously. You're not forced or coerced to do anything, or you're not doing it outside of your sanity. Anything that you say or do consciously, you're held accountable for. However, what you think, thoughts that jump into your mind, you're not held accountable for these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not hold you accountable. He gives you ajr for the good ones and He looks away from the bad ones. The good ones you get ajr for, a small amount. The bad ones, they're overlooked. However, if you turn them into a good one, then you get ajr for that one as well. But you're not held accountable for the bad assumptions. So the ayah, when it's talking about how the people the Muslims on that day, standing behind the trench, when they saw what was happening and they had an assumption in their hearts, right? That's normal. He's just describing what happened. He's not placing blame, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's placing blame in the last ayah we read in the ayat to come. There's a page and a half of blame that is going to be based on behavior. It's not going to be based on a thought. Feeling that is so natural, that is so that is basically an instinctual reflex that you can't really control. That's fine. But then what did you say that day? Did you run? Did you stay? Did you leave? Did you betray? Did you stand your ground and keep your word? Or what did you do? Did you strengthen the Muslims' morale? Did you bring it down? How did you act? That is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is interested in. And He doesn't talk about any other part of the whole ghazwa, basically. Just that focus on that moment when it got to the most extreme part of fear, because this is what we're supposed to learn from this surah. How to deal when things get really bad. Will you still submit? Will you still obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or will you lose it? And we'll stop with that, inshallah, continue bi'idhnillah ta'ala next week. Subhanakallah bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullah khair, barakallahu feekum. Allah yatikum al-afiyah.